what you have done, you careless girl. Useless girl. Just look at what you have done to my precious pots.
I'm sorry, stepmother. I'll buy another one. I'll save up to get it.
Clean that mess up. And if dinner isn't ready in 1 hour, I'll break something else.
The slap cracked across Sarah's face so hard she stumbled into the wall. The clay pot she had been carrying hit the ground and broke, water spreading across the compound floor like a dark stain. Her cheek burned. Her ears rang. But she did not cry because she had learned a long time ago that tears only made her stepmother, Mama Kemi, hit her harder. Clumsy, useless girl, Mama Kemi hissed, standing over her with both hands on her hips. That was my precious pot. The most precious one. And you broke it. Sarah pressed her palm to her cheek and straightened. Around her, the compound was quiet in that particular way it got whenever Mama Kemi raised her hand, while the neighbors pretended to be busy and children found somewhere else to be. I'm sorry, stepmother. Sarah apologized. I'll save up and replace it. Her stepmother laughed, short and sharp, like a blade. Save up? With what money exactly? She hissed, turned around, and walked back into the house, pulling her wrapper tight around her. Clean that mess up. And if dinner isn't ready in 1 hour, I'll break something else. And it won't be a pot. The door shut instantly. Sarah stood in the middle of the compound, water soaking through her slippers, her cheek still throbbing. She looked down at the broken pieces of the clay pot, scattered around her feet. Then she crouched down and began picking them up, one by one, carefully, the way she did everything. She had lived in the compound way before her father died and left her with a woman who had never wanted her. Before her father passed, Mama Kemi had at least pretended to like Sarah. She cooked for her occasionally, called her name lovingly, and pretended to care about her. But the morning after the burial, when the last of the mourners left and the compound went quiet, Mama Kemi had looked at Sarah across the breakfast table and said, "Look here, you are not my child. Don't ever forget that. From today, there will be changes in this house. You must do all the chores in this house. You will cook, clean, and wash all the clothes, including mine and Kemi's clothes," she had added, to Sarah's surprise. "But why do I have to wash for Kemi as well? Can't she?" Mama Kemi landed her a slap on her cheeks before she could finish speaking. "You will do as you are told without questions. Is that clear?" "Yes, Ma." Sarah nodded, holding back her tears. Sarah never forgot. From that day, just as Mama Kemi had instructed, Sarah fetched the water. She cooked the meals. She washed the clothes, swept the compound, carried the firewood, and smiled at every neighbor who passed because her father had always told her that kindness and joy was the only thing nobody could take from you. So she held on to it, even on the days it cost her everything. If you already think Sarah is going through worse, wait until you see what happens next. Make sure to click the subscribe button, like this video, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, because this story is just getting started. Now, let's continue. It was on a Tuesday morning in the middle of Harmattan season that an old man moved into the abandoned compound at the end of the village road. Nobody knew where he came from, but he arrived with one old bag, a walking stick, and a transistor radio that played old highlife music at a volume just loud enough to hear from the road. He was perhaps 65 or 70 years old, the kind of age that was hard to pin down on a man who carried himself slowly but with great deliberateness, like every step was a decision. The village decided within 3 days that he was poor. This conclusion was based on 3 things: his worn-out clothes, his sandals which had been repaired so many times, the original leather was barely visible, and the way he sat at his doorstep in the evenings just watching the sky, the way men with nothing else to do often sat. His name was Elder Ade, but the village just called him the Old Man. Sarah met him on his 4th day. She had been walking across the back path to the stream, balancing her water pot on her head, when she saw him struggling with a bundle of firewood that was clearly too heavy for him. He hadn't asked for help, and he wasn't looking around for any. He was simply trying, slowly and without complaint, to drag the bundle to his doorstep. Sarah set her pot down without thinking twice. "Baba, let me help you with that." He looked up. His eyes were sharp. He looked at her for a moment, then at the water pot she had set on the ground. "You already have something to carry," he said. "The pot isn't going anywhere," she said, and picked up the bundle of firewood before he could argue. She carried it to his doorstep, set it down, and dusted her hands on her wrapper. "Thank you," he said with gratitude as he watched her with those careful eyes. "What is your name?" "Sarah," she answered. "Sarah." He said it like he was storing it somewhere. "I am Ade, but you can call me Baba Ade or Elder Ade if you like." "Okay, Baba Ade." She picked up her pot from where she put it, set it on her head, and continued down the path to the stream. He watched her go. That was the beginning. Over the following weeks, it became a quiet routine that neither of them formally agreed to. Sarah would pass his compound on her morning rounds and check whether he needed firewood. Sometimes she even brought him a portion of whatever she had cooked without her stepmother's knowledge. He always thanked her with the same calm, watchful eyes. He never complained. Never asked for more than she offered. Never made her feel like charity was passing between them, which was the thing she appreciated most, because she knew too well what it felt like to be on the receiving end of help given with contempt. On evenings when her chores were done early and her stepmother wasn't around, she sometimes sat at his doorstep and they talked. He asked her questions, not the surface kind that neighbors asked, but deep ones. What did she want from her life? What were her dreams and aspirations? What did she think about when she was alone? Did she ever dream of leaving the village? She laughed at that last one. Every single day, she said honestly. "And what would you do if you left?" She was quiet for a moment. "I don't know yet, but I'd like to be useful somewhere. Properly useful. Not just useful because someone needs their water fetched." Baba Ade nodded slowly, but he said nothing. Meanwhile, inside the compound at the other end of the road, Mama Kemi was sharpening her cruelty. She had begun reducing Sarah's meals, a smaller portion here, a skipped dinner there, with the explanation that food was expensive and Sarah contributed nothing. She gave Kemi, her daughter, more than enough food. She gave her the new wrapper she had bought from the market and handed Sarah the old torn one. Kemi wore the wrapper to church and made sure to walk past Sarah on her way out. Sarah watched her go, then turned back to the pot she was stirring. She did not say a word. It was this specific silence, the stubborn, undefeated cheerfulness in the face of everything, that Elder Ade was watching. Every day. Every small thing. The way she greeted people who had just watched her be humiliated. The way she laughed with the neighbors' children. The way she brought him pepper soup one rainy evening simply because she thought he might be cold. By the third month, he knew exactly what he had come to find. He just needed to be certain. The morning Elder Ade came to the compound, Sarah was in the middle of braiding her hair with a piece of black thread, sitting on a low stool outside the kitchen door. It was early. The Harmattan air was dry and thin, and the compound was quiet except for the sound of Kemi singing loudly from inside the house. She saw him coming through the gate and stood immediately. "Baba Ade." She smiled, surprised. He had never come to their compound before. She always went to him. "Is everything all right, sir? Do you need something from?" "Sit down, my daughter," he said gently. "I am the one coming to visit today." She sat nervously, and he stood at the entrance and waited. It was Mama Kemi who came out first, drawn by the sight of a stranger in her compound. She looked Elder Ade up and down, staring at the worn agbada, the repaired sandals, the walking stick, and her face arranged itself into the particular expression she reserved for people who were beneath her. "What do you want, old man?" she asked with irritation. "I would like to speak with the head of this household," Elder Ade replied gently. "You are speaking to her." Mama Kemi crossed her arms proudly. "Talk." Baba Ade was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I have come to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage." The compound went still. Sarah's hands froze in her lap, and her jaw dropped in shock. Mama Kemi stared at him. Then she turned her head slowly toward the main house and raised her voice. "Kemi! Kemi, come outside." Kemi appeared at the door, wrapper hastily tied, still holding her phone. She saw the old man and frowned. "Who is this?" "He wants to marry you," Mama Kemi said, already smiling at the absurdity of it. "Me?" Kemi recoiled visibly. "Mama, that man is old enough to be my grandfather." God forbid I marry this grandfather who seems like he is about to die tomorrow. The laughter started from Kemi first, then Mama Kemi, then the neighbor woman who had appeared at the fence to watch. Elder Ade waited patiently, and when the laughter thinned, he said, calmly, I did not ask for Kemi. I'm asking for Sarah. Once again, everything stopped. Mama Kemi's smile did not disappear, it changed. It became something harder and more calculating. She looked at Sarah, then back at the old man, and behind her eyes, a door opened. Sarah, she asked slowly. Yes, Elder Ade replied, nodding. Mama Kemi turned to look at her stepdaughter fully for the first time in what felt like months. Sarah was sitting very still on her low stool, her unfinished braid hanging loose at one side of her head, her eyes moving between Elder Ade and Mama Kemi with an expression that was hard to describe. Please, Sarah said quietly. Mama, please. How much? Mama Kemi said quickly. Sarah closed her eyes in disappointment. Kemi chuckled quietly. Even the neighbor at the fence leaned closer. Baba Ade shook his head, disappointed. You sound like she is for sale. Oh, so you expect to take her away free of charge? She snapped angrily. If you are not ready to pay, please leave my compound. Elder Ade sighed and reached into the pocket of his agbada. He produced an old folded envelope. I believe this should be sufficient, he said. Mama Kemi crossed the compound, took the envelope, and opened it. She counted the notes inside slowly, deliberately making sure she felt each one. Then she looked up and named the price she had decided on. An amount low enough to be an insult. The kind that said, this girl is worth nothing, take her, I am doing you a favor. Elder Ade didn't flinch. Agreed, he said. Mama. Sarah stood up. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. Mama, please listen to me. I am begging you. Please do not do this. I will work harder. I will do whatever you ask. Please. Mama Kemi walked past her and went back into the house. Go and pack your things. Mama. I said pack your things, Sarah. She stopped at the door and turned. Her voice was flat and final. You should be grateful. At least someone wants you. The door closed. Sarah stood in the middle of the compound. The neighbor at the fence looked away. Kemi also went back inside and continued singing with that terrible voice of hers. Only Elder Ade remained there, watching her carefully. She looked at him for a long moment. This man she had cooked for, carried firewood for, sat with in the evenings and shared her small, honest dreams with. This man she thought she knew. Why? Why would you do such a thing to me? She asked, tears rolling down her face. I honestly thought you were someone I could trust. Don't worry, you'll understand soon. He said calmly, and she shook her head sadly. She didn't respond. She just went inside and packed what she had. It did not take long because she literally had nothing meaningful to her name. Her last act before walking out of the gate was to go to the neighbor's boy, the child who had shared his food with her more times than she could count, and press her only good wrapper into his small hands. Give this to your mother, she said. She admired it once. Tell her it's a gift. The boy looked at the wrapper, then up at her. Are you coming back, Auntie Sarah? She smiled wide, warm, the kind of smile that cost her everything to produce in that moment. Just take care of your mother for me. She looked back and waited to see if her stepmother and stepsister would at least come out to bid her farewell. But they didn't. She sighed, and then walked out of the gate. Elder Ade fell into step beside her unhurried. They took a motorcycle to the next town. And at the next town, they took another motorcycle to the next 3 towns away. Sarah sat behind the rider and watched the village disappear behind her, the mud walls, the compound rooftops, the narrow roads she had walked 1,000 times. She stopped crying. She had promised herself she wouldn't anymore. At a junction just outside the next town, the motorcycle stopped. Elder Ade climbed off, paid the rider, and made a phone call to Sarah's surprise. 2 words. That was all. Then he folded his phone and stood beside Sarah and waited. Sarah looked around at the empty junction road, at the sparse trees, at the dust rising in the late morning air. She was trying to calculate what kind of future lived at the end of this road, a small house, probably. A man who needed a cook and a companion. A quiet, diminished kind of life. She had survived worse. She hoped to survive this too. Then she heard the engine. It came from the left, smooth and low, the kind of sound that didn't belong on a village junction road. A black Mercedes SUV appeared around the bend, slowing as it approached them. It stopped. The driver, in a pressed uniform, stepped out, walked around, and opened the back door. He looked at Elder Ade. "Sir." Sarah did not move, she remained speechless. Elder Ade turned to her. The worn agbada, the repaired sandals, the walking stick. All of it exactly as it had always been. And yet nothing, not one single thing, was what she had thought it was. "Baba Ade," she whispered. "What is going on? Who are you?" He gestured toward the open car door. "Come, my daughter. I will explain on the way." She looked at the car. At him. At the driver standing patiently in his neat uniform. Her legs moved before her mind fully agreed. She got in. The door closed softly behind her. Elder Ade then settled in beside her. The driver pulled onto the road and the junction disappeared behind them, and with it, every version of the future Sarah had been bracing herself for. Outside the window, the world was getting wider. They drove for a long time before Elder Ade spoke. Sarah sat with her hands folded in her lap, watching the landscape change outside the window, the village roads giving way to wider tarred roads, the sparse trees thickening into dense roadside markets, and the small towns bleeding into larger ones. The air conditioning in the car was so cold, she had to press her arms together to stop herself from shivering, but she said nothing. She did not want to appear as though she had never been in a car with air conditioning before. She had actually never been in a car with air conditioning before. She had never even been in a car before. "You want to know who I am?" Elder Ade said finally. "Yes, and I want to know why you deceived me," Sarah said. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. "You could have told me the truth at any point. Any one of those evenings I sat at your door. Any of those mornings. Why did you let me think you were—" She suddenly stopped and looked at him. "Were you laughing at me this whole time?" "No." His voice was sharp with something that sounded like offense. "I have never laughed at you. Not once." "Then please explain it to me because I'm very confused." He was quiet for a moment, looking at his hands. Then he said, "When my wife died months ago, I left Lagos because everything there reminded me of her. Every room, every chair, even every cup in the kitchen. I needed to go somewhere that had nothing to do with the life we had built together. So I went back to where I came from. A village. Simple things." He paused. "I did not go there to find anyone. I was not running a test. I was just grieving." Sarah looked at him. "And then I saw you," he continued. "I saw you with your water pot one morning, singing to yourself as you headed back from the stream. Just singing quietly, like the weight on your head was not your problem." He shook his head slightly. "I asked a neighbor about you, and she told me everything. How your father died, how your stepmother treats you, and how you have never, not once, been seen to speak badly about anyone or respond to cruelty with cruelty." He turned to look at her directly. "In 6 months, I watched you, Sarah. I watched you carefully. And everything I saw told me one thing." "And what is that?" Sarah asked. "That you are exactly the kind of person my son needs in his life." He said it simply. "Dyer is a good man. He is successful and he is kind, but he has spent so long surrounded by people who want things from him that he has forgotten what it feels like to be with someone who doesn't want to take from him. Someone who gives without calculating. Someone who helps because it is the right thing and not because there is a return expected." He looked at her steadily. "That is you. That has always been you." Sarah turned back to the window. Her throat felt tight. "You could have just asked me," she said quietly. "You didn't have to buy me from that woman like I was something for sale." "I know." His voice was heavy with it. "And I am sorry for the way it happened. But I needed her to agree. And the only language that woman speaks is transaction." He paused. "You were never for sale, Sarah. You were never purchased. You were chosen. There is a difference. And I need you to hold on to that difference." She didn't respond. But she did not look away from the window for a long time, and the way her jaw worked told him she was processing, not just the words, but the weight of being seen. Possibly for the first time in years. That afternoon, they arrived Lagos before she was ready for it. It came the way it always comes for people encountering it the first time, loud and sudden and enormous, like the city had been waiting just around a bend in the road and had decided to reveal itself all at once. The traffic, the noise, the buildings climbing over each other, the sheer, relentless aliveness of it. Sarah pressed closer to the window without realizing she was doing it, her eyes moving fast, trying to take in everything. The car turned off the main road into a quieter estate, then through a gate that opened automatically, and stopped in front of a building that did not look like any house Sarah had ever seen in her life. It was large and white and clean, set back from a garden that was impossibly green considering the dry season. There were lights along the walkway even though it was still afternoon. A woman in a neat house dress was already coming down the front steps, round-faced, warm-eyed, moving with the particular brisk energy of someone who ran the house and knew it. "Mama B," Elder Ade said, as he stepped out of the car. "You're welcome back, sir," she said, respectfully without missing a step. Then she looked past him at Sarah, who had climbed out of the car and was standing on the driveway looking up at the building with the quiet, overwhelmed expression of someone who is doing their absolute best not to appear overwhelmed. Elder Ade nodded, and Mama B's face softened completely. She walked straight to Sarah and took both her hands. "You must be Sarah. Come, come. You must be hungry. Are you hungry? Of course you're hungry. Come inside." Sarah looked at Elder Ade over Mama B's shoulder. He gave her the smallest nod. She let Mama B lead her up the steps and into the house. She was shown to a room that was larger than the entire kitchen she had cooked in for years. There was a bed with actual pillows, a window that looked out over the garden, a private bathroom with a mirror that reflected a girl she almost did not recognize, dusty from the road, one braid still undone, cheek faintly red, where Mama Kemi had struck her earlier that morning. That morning, it was just her normal life. And right at noon, it felt like she was living another life entirely. "Freshen up and please make yourself comfortable. This is home now," Mama B said in the sweetest voice. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed and pressed her palms flat against the sheets, cool and clean and softer than anything she had ever touched, and for the first time since she had walked out of that compound gate, she let herself cry. Not loudly. Not for long. Just enough to release what the day had packed into her chest. Then she got into the bathroom, freshened up, neatly finished her braid, and went downstairs to help Mama B with cooking. Thankfully, Mama B was accommodating. She made it easy for Sarah to feel comfortable in such a short time. Sarah was standing at the kitchen counter laughing at something Mama B had said, a story about Elder Ade once mistaking salt for sugar and ruining an entire pot of tea, when she heard the front door open. She grabbed the dish towel from the counter and turned toward the kitchen doorway to call out to Mama B, who had stepped into the pantry and walked directly into a wall. Except the wall was warm and wearing a suit. She stumbled back and looked up. He was tall, taller than she had registered in the first half-second of collision. Dark, with his father's same sharp eyes, though his held a different quality, more guarded, more private, like rooms whose doors were mostly kept closed. He had loosened his tie somewhere between the door and the kitchen, and was holding his jacket over one arm, and he was looking down at her with an expression she could not immediately interpret. It was not irritation or surprise exactly, but it was something that looked, in the brief moment before he recovered his composure, very much like a man who had just been stopped in his tracks. Sarah stepped back further. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know anyone was. I wasn't looking where." "It's fine," he said. His voice was low and gentle as he kept looking at her. "I'm sorry," she said again, and retreated into the kitchen, her heart knocking against her ribs for a reason she could not immediately name. In the hallway, Dyer stood exactly where she had left him. His jacket was still over his arm. His tie was still half loosened. He had not moved a single step toward the living room. "Dad," he called out, his eyes still on the kitchen doorway. Elder Ade appeared from the sitting room, reading glasses on, newspaper in hand. "You're back, son. Good. Wash your hands. Dinner is almost ready." Dyer turned to look at his father, then back at the kitchen, then at his father again. "Who," he said carefully, "is that?" Elder Ade looked at him over the rim of his glasses for a long moment. Then he went back to his newspaper. Wash your hands, Dyer. Dinner that evening was the most interesting meal Dyer had sat through in years. He watched Sarah the entire time without meaning to. That was the thing that unsettled him. He was not a man who was easily swayed. He was composed, deliberate, and definitely the kind of person who could sit through a board meeting with 15 people demanding his attention and give nothing away. But Sarah made him careless without doing anything. She simply existed at the table, and he could not stop noticing her. She served his father first, not because she was asked, not because anyone had set that expectation, but because it was clearly just how she moved through a space. She noticed when Mama B's water glass was empty and refilled it before Mama B reached for it. When Dyer's phone rang midway through the meal and he stepped outside to take the call, he came back to find his plate covered with an inverted bowl to keep the heat in. He stood at the entrance to the dining room and looked at the covered plate for a moment. Then he sat down, removed the bowl, and ate without saying anything. But he felt the specific, unfamiliar weight of being considered. Of someone thinking about him not because he was his father's son or because he had a reputation in Lagos that preceded him, but simply because there was food on a plate and it should not go cold. Such a small thing. He could not explain why it lodged itself so firmly in his chest. He tried talking to her after dinner, carefully, the way he always approached his father's introductions, waiting for the performance to begin. He asked her questions designed to reveal agenda. What did she think of Lagos? What were her plans? What did she hope for? She looked at him with honest eyes and said, I haven't thought that far yet. Today has been a lot to process. He blinked. That's a fair answer. I know. She tilted her head. Was it the wrong kind of answer? No, he said, and meant it more than she knew. Can I ask you something? She said. Go ahead. Your dad mentioned you were an architect. She began and he nodded. Is it difficult? Being an architect? Or is it the kind of thing where once you understand how it works, the difficulty becomes manageable? She asked him. He looked at her. Nobody had ever asked him that. They asked what projects he had worked on, what his biggest contract was, which buildings in Lagos had his name attached to them. Nobody ever asked whether the thing itself was difficult. It depends on the day, he said slowly. Some days the design comes and it feels like you're just receiving it. Other days you fight every line. She nodded like this made complete sense to her. That's how cooking is for me. Some days the food tastes like it made itself. Other days everything burns. He chuckled slightly. Over the weeks that followed, Dyer stopped pretending he was maintaining distance. He was not maintaining anything. She disarmed him daily with her complete lack of strategy. She wandered the house with frank curiosity, asking Mama B questions about the architecture of the rooms, running her hand along the curve of the staircase banister like she was reading it. One evening, he found her standing in the corridor outside his study, staring at the framed structural drawings he had mounted on the wall, drawings from his first major project, which he had hung there more as a reminder than decoration. She did not hear him approach. Those lines, she said to herself. The way they hold each other up. It's like they're in conversation. He stood behind her for a moment without speaking, then said, That's exactly what they're doing. She spun around, startled. She pressed her back against the wall. I wasn't. The door was open. I didn't touch anything. I know. He looked past her at the drawings. You can look at them properly if you want. Come in. She hesitated, then followed him into the study. She stood in front of each drawing with the same focused attention she gave everything. She asked him what the numbers along the margins meant. He told her. She asked why a particular wall in the third drawing angled the way it did instead of running straight. He explained load distribution, and she listened with her whole face. By the time she left his study an hour later, Dyer sat in his chair and stared at the ceiling for a long time. He went to his father that night. Elder Ade was on the back veranda with his evening tea, radio playing low beside him. He did not look up when Dyer sat down across from him. You knew, Dyer said. When you brought her here, you already knew. Knew what? Elder Ade said mildly. Dad. The old man finally looked at him, and in his eyes was not smugness, but it was something closer to relief. The deep, quiet relief of a man who had carried a hope carefully for a long time and was only now setting it down. I watched her for 6 months, Elder Ade said. I watched that girl be broken down every single day and rebuild herself every single morning. I watched her give to people who gave her nothing. I watched her laugh when she had every reason not to. He paused. I did not bring her here for you to fall in love with her, Dyer. I brought her here because she deserved to be somewhere that deserved her. He picked up his tea. What you do with that is your own business. Dyer said nothing. He sat with his father in the quiet for a while, the radio playing its old songs, the Lagos night settling around them. Then Kemi suddenly arrived. She came 3 months later, beautiful and deliberate, dressed in the kind of outfit that announced intention from a distance. She told the gateman she was Sarah's sister, and Sarah, who was incapable of turning family away regardless of what that family had done, called the gate herself and told them to let her in. Kemi's eyes moved over the house in the careful, calculating way of someone who was already rearranging what they saw into opportunity. She hugged Sarah with performance, the kind of embrace that looked warm from outside, but had no pressure in it. I missed you, Kemi said. Mama was worried. Sarah looked at her steadily. Mama sent you. Kemi's smile did not waver. Can I come on my own? How did you find this place? Sarah asked further. Well, let's just say information like this one spreads faster than you can imagine. Kemi replied, shrugging. She stayed for dinner and laughed at everything Dyer said. She angled herself toward him in the practiced way of someone who had spent years knowing exactly what they looked like from every direction. She was magnetic and polished and completely, carefully on. Dyer was polite. He had been raised to be polite, but he watched. He watched how Kemi handed her plate to Mama B without looking at her. How she spoke to Sarah with a warmth that evaporated the moment Sarah turned away. How she touched his arm when she laughed, lightly, deliberately, like she was marking something. And he watched Sarah. Sarah, who refilled Kemi's water without being asked. Who told Mama be quietly in the kitchen that Kemi liked her tea with little sugar. Who sat across from the sister who had mocked her, maltreated her, and watched her be led away and said nothing. Not one word. That night, Kemi found Dyer on the front steps alone. She sat beside him, letting the silence work for a moment. Then said, she doesn't belong here, you know. Sarah. She's a village girl. She won't know how to be what someone like you needs. Dyer turned and looked at her with an expression so calm it was almost cold. Someone like me, he repeated. Yes, you have a life here. A reputation. The kind of woman who fits into that life. Has never once covered my plate to keep it warm, he said, cutting her off. Has never asked me whether the work is difficult rather than whether the work is profitable. Has never stood in front of my drawings and understood them without being taught. He stood up. I think you should go to bed, Kemi. Kemi stared up at him, but she refused to give up. Do you know that Sarah had multiple personalities back in the village? She began, her voice barely above a whispering. What do you mean? Dyer asked her. Glad to have gotten his attention, she continued. She was always jumping from one man to another, but no one found out because she masks that personality of hers properly. It's just my mother and I who know about this, because we caught her red-handed. Really? Dyer raised an eyebrow. Thinking he caught the bait, she said further, yes, if I begin to tell you everything that she has done, you'll not believe. Oh, just keep quiet. He snapped, cutting her off to her surprise. The only reason I'm not throwing you out of this house tonight is out of respect for Sarah and my father. If not, you'd have found yourself sleeping on the cold streets tonight. He said, obviously annoyed, but not raising his voice. If you think you can come here and sow a seed of discord, permit me to tell you that you chose the wrong house. He hissed. Sarah will make sure you're comfortable tonight, he added. Because that's who she is. But read my lips, the next time you speak about Sarah in such manner, I'm going to sue you for defamation and trust me, no lawyer in this city will be able to defend you. He warned, his low voice sending shivers down her spine. Make sure to leave first thing in the morning. He instructed, and then headed back into his room. The next morning, Kemi left before breakfast was served. Sarah walked her to the gate and handed her transport money she had received as a gift from Mama B. She pressed it into her hand without hesitation, without conditions. Kemi looked at the money, then at Sarah's face, searching for something. Pity maybe? Or victory. She found neither. Just Sarah. Open, steady, and unreduced. Kemi got into the car and did not look back. The next few months were beautiful. Dyer and Sarah got so fond of each other. Sarah would walk through the garden in the house, admiring the different beautiful flowers, while Dyer would make sure to bring them water or drinks, and they would have different conversations. It was during one of these conversations that he asked her what she really wanted to do now that she was settled in Lagos. I'm sure you'll be surprised, but I've always dreamt of being an architect. Dyer stared at her in surprise. Really? Yes. Sarah nodded. So why didn't you pursue that dream? He asked her again, and she smiled sadly. Well, when my father died, my dream died too. My stepmother was sure to stop my little education, even though there was little to no good education back in the village. Dyer sighed. What if I told you I could help you get that dream back on track? He asked, and she was surprised. I would definitely love that, but I don't want to bother you with my problems. Dyer shook his head. Don't say that. Ever since you came into this house, your problem has become my problem too. Our problem. He winked and she smiled. Over the next few months, Dyer began to help her just as he promised he would. After getting her enrolled in school, they would go over different designs and projects whenever she got back from school, and sometimes at his office. And he made sure to be with her every step of the way. Even as she juggled architectural school and life all together, she never stopped her duties at home even when she was told over and over again that she didn't have to do anything. She also made sure to bring food to Dyer whenever he got really busy with work at the office. This continued till she became a successful architect. Years later, a photograph appeared in a Lagos lifestyle online magazine of Sarah, now a successful architect, and Dyer couldn't have been more proud of her. And right on the next page of the magazine, another photograph appeared of Dyer and Sarah. Dyer had insisted on an intimate formal gathering with just close friends present in a garden in the evening light. In the photo, Sarah stood in a simple yellow dress that Dyer had bought her, smiling with tears in her eyes. Right in front of her, Dyer was on one knee with a beautiful shiny diamond ring in his hand. Behind them was a huge design with the inscription, "Will you marry me?" Dyer was looking at her the way a man looks when he has completely stopped fighting something and simply decided to be grateful it found him. The photo traveled the way these things do, from phone to phone, mouth to mouth, road to road, until it arrived, as it was always going to arrive, in that small village at the end of a dusty compound road. Kemi saw it on her phone on her way to the market and screamed in horror. Mama Kemi, on the other hand, saw it on a neighbor's phone screen. She stood there for a long time, holding the phone with both hands, looking at the girl she had starved and struck and sold for the price of nothing. Sarah in yellow laughing. And Dyer, looking at her like she was the only thing that mattered. And standing to the side was Elder Ade, the one they all called the poor old man. The same man they had all laughed at. Mama Kemi handed the phone back without a word. She walked back to her compound. Through the gate. Across the courtyard where she had slapped Sarah that last morning. And through the door. She sat down in the chair by the window, the one that faced the small, empty room at the back of the house. Nobody came to punish her. No one needed to because her conscience did more than punishment. She sat in that chair and understood, fully and finally, what she had held in her hands and thrown away. Outside, the village went on. And somewhere in Lagos, Sarah, with her new family, laughed freely, fully, and completely. Weeks later, she was invited to speak at a very important event where she chose to speak about her life, and she titled her speech, "From a Village Girl to a Lagos Architect." The whole city of Lagos heard about it. And as usual, news and the images from the event traveled to her village. Mama Kemi and Kemi witnessed it once again and stared at Sarah with a broken heart. And at that moment, Mama Kemi desperately wished that she had treated Sarah better. She wished she could turn back the hands of time and make things right, but it was impossible. Do not treat people unfairly just because you have more privileges than them, because you never know when the tide will turn in their favor. Always remember that no one will stay in the same spot forever. I hope you enjoyed this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. And if you love this story, you already know what to do. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling us what moment hit you the hardest. Was it the slap at the beginning? The junction reveal? The moment Dyer stood up for her? Sarah's achievement? Or the proposal? Tell us below. And don't go anywhere because we have more beautiful stories coming that you absolutely cannot miss.